Yo, how's it going guys? It's your boy Jay with a brand new video, and yes, we're finally utilising the background, the videos. Obviously you've seen it in videos now for quite a while, but we're not actually going to be using it for videos for the somewhat foreseeable future. But anyway, today we're going to be talking about 10 shocking players that have handed in transfer requests to some extent. They're not all shocking, some of them were quite expected. Anyways, we're going to be looking at 10 players who've handed in transfer requests to their clubs. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the list. Before we get into this, let me just stress they're not in any particular order. I've ordered them in some sort of way, and you'll realise as we get towards the end, they're sort of building up to the more bigger ones, but they're not particularly in any order. I've just picked 10 players. But number 10, further than less, is Carlos Tevez. Now, he had obviously been in England for quite a while. He played for Manchester United for a few seasons, which I only even found out after that he left. It was actually a loan move. I thought it was a permanent move. He played there like he was, a proper Man United player, but no, it was a loan move. He then also did go on to play for Manchester City, and I forgot he played for West Ham before that sometime. But yeah, he went on to move into Manchester City, and I think he was there for about 2 years, and at this point he'd actually been given the Manchester City captaincy, and he handed in a transfer request. Now, some of his reasonings were very, very strange. He said he was homesick, which, is quite understandable if he wanted to go back to his home club. But then he also said he had problems with some of the executives and the people who are much higher up in the Manchester City hierarchy, which isn't really a reason to hand in a transfer request. Of course, it was turned down. It went on for quite a while. He wasn't playing for the first team, and eventually he did actually withdraw his transfer request. Said he was, he was committed to the club and all that sort of bullshit that players do when obviously they take back their transfer request because they know they're not going to get their move. But yes, he did actually start playing for Manchester City again for a couple more seasons before moving to Juventus, and then eventually 4 years later, I think if I've done the maths right, then did go back to Boca Juniors. So not sure how homesick he really was. The next player is Jermaine Defoe. He's actually quite relevant now because we are in the January transfer window, and it will make sense. But he used to play for West Ham in his very young days, early days coming onto the scene in English football, and West Ham were actually relegated from the Premier League to the old Division 1, and within 24 hours of them being relegated, he actually handed in a transfer request. Of course, you can imagine it didn't go down well with obviously him being one of their star players, and he just seems to be a very naive thing to do, thinking he was better than West Ham, thinking that he was way too good to play Championship football and actually help them get back into the Premier League, which he probably could have done single-handedly at that time. And of course he did move on to Tottenham, had some very good years there, but he actually come up recently. I'm not too sure how recently this is and how long this would be something that's in the public, but he has actually said that he has actually regretted handing in that transfer request, and at the current time he'd be happy to go back to West Ham to right his wrongs, and obviously showed the fans that he did have love for West Ham, and he was young, and like I said, he was naive, and he actually regretted his decision to actually do that. The next player I have included in this list, even though a real formal transfer request wasn't handed in, but that is Cesc Fabregas. Now, he obviously was Arsenal captain after joining from Barcelona, and he had some very good seasons there. He obviously won titles, all that good stuff that a player of his quality can do. Now, in this transfer window, they had just said goodbye to Samir Nasri, who had been one of their star players for the last 2 years, and to lose not one but two of your star players in one transfer window can be very detrimental. So of course Arsenal were very, very reluctant to let him go, and he made it public that he wanted to leave. He made it public he wanted to go back to Barcelona after they wanted him back, and there was obviously interest from the Catalan Giants, and they wanted Cesc Fabregas to return back to Barcelona, and he took some huge sacrifices to make sure that transfer went through, including one of them being that in his contract when he had joined Barcelona and that all gone through, that he was actually still paying back Arsenal for some of his wages. I think it was somewhere between the regions of £1 to £2 million pounds after converted from euros, that he was paying back to Arsenal every single season for maybe about 3 or 4 years, and it's quite insane that he had to do that just to make sure that his move went through. But yeah. So the next player could feature on this list twice, and that is actually Wayne Rooney. Now I'm going to include it as him as an individual and not the individual circumstances. So the first one, of course, was way back in the time when he had burst onto the scene as an Evertonian youngster and was absolutely doing wonderful things in the Premier League for someone of such a tender age. And of course you can imagine big clubs were interested in him, and one of these clubs was Manchester United. Everton had just offered Wayne Rooney a brand new contract to try and keep him and tie him down for at least a few more seasons of him playing at the level he was was playing, and obviously helped Everton climb higher in the table. But as you can imagine, he wanted this move to Manchester United. At the time was the biggest club in the world, and probably are still one of the biggest clubs, being unbiased a little bit there. But he obviously wanted to make his big move, and obviously, you know, it would have helped his career, and it obviously has helped his career massively in him becoming a better player. And he handed in a transfer request, and then obviously did subsequently get his move from Everton to Manchester United. Let's get forward a few years now. Chelsea were actually very interested in taking Wayne Rooney from Manchester United to Chelsea, making him go from a red back to a blue. And the first bid that Chelsea did put onto him was between the regions of 20 to 30 million. Jose Mourinho had a very high admiration for Wayne Rooney. That bid was rejected, and of course Rooney actually was very considering making this move from Manchester to London. And of course, because of this, he handed in a transfer request to try and push through it, and obviously, you know, make Chelsea make another bid, which they did. Again, that was rejected, and this was during Alex Ferguson's last season as the Manchester United manager. And straight away, as soon as David Moyes had come in as the new manager, he said Wayne Rooney is not leaving, he is staying at the club, and that is what he has done so far. So the next player to feature on this list is Luka Modric. Again, is another player who didn't, you know, put in a formal transfer request, but he did speak publicly and very openly, saying that he wanted to leave his club at the time, which was Tottenham Hotspur. And again, it's another player who's come under a bid from Chelsea. Something to do with these bids is makes players want to just leave their clubs. But Chelsea were very fond in making him switch from North London to West London, and bidding in between the regions of 25 to 27 million was the first bid, and it was rejected. And following that, Luka Modric then did hand in a transfer request, because apparently there was a verbal agreement made between him and Daniel Levy, who is a Tottenham chairman, that he was going to be given permission to leave, and he was going to be able to make this move from Tottenham to Chelsea. But after that agreement had been made, they still rejected the bid. So Luka Modric, you know, then spoke publicly saying he wanted to leave, and this is where the rumours of that he handed in the transfer request came through. It's still to this day not confirmed whether if he did hand in a transfer request or not. But following that, Chelsea did bid, I think, 2 or 3 more times, going all the way from 27 million to their first bid, all the way up to 40 million. And each time these bids were rejected, went through a stage where Luka Modric wasn't playing. You know, he said he's not going to play for the club anymore. You know, he's made his mind up that he's going to make this move from Tottenham to Chelsea, which obviously at the time would have been a very big move for him. It would have been, you know, getting European football and all those good things that would have come from this move, and it just wasn't happening for him. You know, Harry Redknapp was the manager at the time, just said, you know, you need to take it up, suck it up, and get back into the first team. And he did so by Harry Redknapp actually naming him in the squad, despite him saying that he doesn't want to play for the club. He still named him. And you know, again, when he did eventually leave the following season to Real Madrid, he did say, you know, he had a lot of love for Tottenham. You know, his head just wasn't in the right place at the time, and it was just one of those things where it happened, unfortunately. The next player on this list is, oh boy, it is Fernando Torres. Now, Fernando Torres had an absolutely wonderful couple of seasons at Liverpool, and as you can imagine, him playing at the quality is going to mean clubs are going to be very interested in. And again, no surprise, it was Chelsea who put in a bid for him. They put in a £40 million bid for him to switch from Merseyside to London. The bid was obviously rejected, and that led to Fernando Torres handing in a formal transfer request to Liverpool, and that followed by Chelsea making a second bid. It was a British record bid at the time for 50 million, and he did get his move and actually made his debut for Chelsea against Liverpool, which was a good game. We just can't seem to get away from Chelsea. I haven't done this on purpose. I've generally just been looking at players who put a transfer request, but it just seems to be something to do with Chelsea. And the next player is Romelu Lukaku. Now, following Chelsea's Super Cup defeat to Bayern Munich, and it was actually a game where Lukaku actually missed a penalty with the chance to actually, you know, put Chelsea in a very good position in that shootout. He actually did request to leave the club. Chelsea actually denied this request, and then he did go out on loan to Everton. Following that loan move to Everton, he actually made that move permanent, which was not surprising as he was already determined to leave the club before the loan move was made, that he did actually go and make that move permanent. You know, it was following the fact that Chelsea did actually sign Samuel Eto'o, and it, you know, was quite clear to Lukaku that there was going to be no space for him following the fact they already had Fernando Torres and Demba Ba on their book. So Lukaku went out, had a brilliant season again on loan, because previously he had a very good season on loan at West Brom, scoring more goals than any of the Chelsea players. So he was quite convinced that if he's not going to play here, what is the point? Well, I'm clearly better than any of the strikers here. You're not going to keep me, let me out. And then he did eventually get his loan move following the year after that, made it to a permanent, and now he's probably one of the best strikers in the Premier League. So the next player this list, I think, is the only player in this list that wasn't a Premier League player and hasn't been a Premier League player, and that is Hernandez, obviously playing over in the Serie A. Now during his time at Napoli, he did actually hand in a transfer request, and there was a video that went out of him crying leaving a training session. Now a lot of people thought that this video of him crying was purely because he was being a spoiled brat and he didn't get his request actually accepted. His request was accepted, and his reason apparently for crying was the fact that he didn't want to leave the city of Rome, which obviously is where Lazio is. And a lot of people thought, you know, this was kind of him trying to get sympathy from the fans, and it was just, you know, a whole act that he was playing. But he did say that he loved the club and he just wanted to move on because it was that time of his career where he needed to, you know, just make a change and move on to better things. So number 2 is one Liverpool fans probably won't want to remember, and that is Steven Gerrard. Now in 2005, again, no surprise, Chelsea put in a bid that was around 35 million, which 12 years ago was an absolutely ridiculous amount of money to pay for a midfielder. He was 25 at the time and probably one of the best midfielders in the Premier League, and Chelsea fans were so excited by the prospect of having both Lampard and Gerrard on the team. Of course, when the bid was rejected, he spoke publicly saying he wanted to leave Liverpool, was willing to hand in a transfer request because Real Madrid were also interested in him, and they said they would only make a bid if Gerrard did actually hand in a formal transfer request. You know, he made a public one, a verbal one, like a few other players have done previously in this list, and it had the worst effect he could imagine. He got death threats to members of his family. You know, fans were almost having a backlash. They were burning his shirts. They were, you know, taunting at him. They were chanting at him. And you could understand that as someone who's been at that club for his whole life, to see his fans completely turn against him, he had to make a U-turn. You know, he obviously said that, you know, I want to play for the club now, I'm going to stay here, this is my club. And of course he did stay there for a very long time before having a few seasons at LA Galaxy. Is now retired, and yeah, but still, that would have been an amazing transfer. So of course, number 1, you can probably tell by the title and probably could tell where with the way this video was going, is Dimitri Payet. So of course he signed to West Ham last season and had probably one of the best debut seasons seen in the Premier League for a very, very long time, being one of the most influential midfielders that the Premier League has seen, and it obviously helped West Ham to get a very good, respectable last ever finish at Upton Park. And of course this season hasn't gone so well for him, and you can probably tell why. You know, his head just hadn't been in the right place from day one, and he's pretty much said that he doesn't want to play for the club anymore. You know, he's going on strike until he gets his move. You know, his old club of Marseille have put in a bid for him, which was rejected, and that's sort of what started, you know, this whole spark of him wanting to leave the club because, you know, I'm assuming he wants to return back to France. But he's in a situation now where I'm not too sure, and I'm pretty sure majority of football fans around the world are not too sure who really wants to buy him, because it's only been a few months since he signed a new contract which was going to keep him there for at least, I think, another 4 years, and he already wants out, which is not a very good way to portray yourself, and it's a very bad look for him for any clubs who potentially want to sign him, knowing that they could sign him, pay him big money, and he can just like that want out because the team's not doing as well as they should be. I could do a whole video talking about Payet, but yeah, that is going to be the end of the video. We're going to round it up there. If you have enjoyed this video, of course, smash the like button down below. If you're new to our channel, make sure you hit that red subscribe button, and it's very much appreciated because we are so close to 10,000 subscribers. So if you're not new, please do hit it, share it with your friends, and yeah, if you want me to do more videos like this, of course I need you guys to smash that like button, because that's the way I will know if you want me to do more videos like this. And apart from that, this is your boy Jay. As always, I will see you next time.